PINAC News, October 28th, 2014. Interview with George Sheldon, Florida Democratic candidate for Attorney General. Mr. Sheldon, thank you for coming on the program.
Well, it's good to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, I don't know if you've read photographyisnotacrime.com, but we're a First Amendment rights blog. So I'd like to get your take, first off, on the citizen's right to photograph. Can you tell us under what amendments that's protected by our Constitution?
Well, the right to photograph is the same thing as freedom of speech. And unless your speech impedes on someone else, for instance, unless you holler a fire in a crowded theater and there isn't a fire.
Right.
We have a fundamental right in this country, and frankly, sometimes that freedom is inconvenient. I recognize that. But it is a fundamental right that the forebearers felt was very important.
Well, one thing that we have observed in our interactions with police and government throughout the country is sometimes a misplaced right of privacy. In your opinion, do public servants have an expectation of privacy when performing their public duties?
Well, particularly not in this state. We have a sunshine law that is very important. It basically says public records and public meetings are open to the public and should be. My view is sunshine is the great disinfectant.
Well, we've had issues sometimes merely filming public buildings or taking photographs within public buildings while performing these public records requests. Is that something that local governments should be allowed to do?
No, and historically, the Attorney General of Florida has been the protector of the Sunshine Law, the protector of the citizen's right to know. And regrettably, the current Attorney General has not been doing that. But when Bob Butterworth was Attorney General, he was very aggressive in upholding the citizen's right to know.
Now, you were an assistant to Mr. Butterworth. How can you bring a different perspective to the Attorney General's office, if elected, on enforcement of the Sunshine Law?
Well, the one of the values of the Attorney General is they have the right to issue opinions, and those opinions are binding unless there is a contrary court ruling.
Okay.
So that is something that I would aggressively pursue and have in the past.
So, in other words, citizens could look to the Florida State Attorney General's office when institutions, say police or local governments, refuse these freedom of information requests under the Sunshine Law. Is that correct?
Yes. I mean, and now let me make it clear. It's an Attorney General opinion as opposed to an enforcement mechanism, but it has substantial weight, particularly with the court.
Right. So what happens if the governments refuse? As I understand it, citizens have a right to basically sue the government for these records, and then it becomes a taxpayer expense, right?
That's correct. And frankly, you have a right to these records without the kind of cost that a lot of agencies try to impose.
Really?
So the Attorney General has historically, in effect, said that this is an inappropriate use of your ability to charge a citizen, and has forced those reductions in those costs. You can't, in effect, government cannot, in effect, say we're going to hold these records in private until you pay for them.
Really? I'd never heard that before. So I'd like to ask one more question, then we'll let you go. I know you're busy and have a next appointment coming up. But do you have an opinion on the issue of police wearing body cameras?
Well, I oppose and still do the decision of the Defense Department to grant some of its excess property to law enforcement agencies, tanks, military-style type weapons, military uniforms.
The MRAP. The MRAP and AK, M16 rifles, right?
The police ought to be the police. They ought to be seen as the police, independent of a military or a militia. Now, should they have the right to wear a bulletproof vest? Obviously, to protect themselves. But the kind of thing that happened in Ferguson is not what I think we want a police department in this country to look like.
I agree. I think that it's really disturbing. Really disturbing, the militarization of police. I saw an image of one of the local police departments driving their MRAP around, and it almost terrified me. I mean, it's...
And to be honest with you, I'm not sure that most police departments in this country want to be doing that. I am a firm believer, number one, that a police department ought to look like the face of the community that it serves. And number two, I am a strong proponent of community policing. Police getting out of their vehicles, intermingling with the public. That's how you develop trust and confidence. The police are here to protect us, to keep us safe, and they also have a responsibility to know their community, and they're not going to know their community if they are constantly in a police car simply driving around that community.
That's true. It really isolates them more than bringing them into the community, being in those cars. And it's even more dangerous, I've heard, when you have two officers in a unit, because they tend to be more aggressive.
You're absolutely right.
So what can we do in Florida to improve public records access just on a daily basis? Is there something that a citizen can do outside of appealing directly to the Attorney General's office? Is there something, a tip, trick?
Frankly, the right exists. It's in the statute. It's in the Constitution of Florida. And frankly, the average citizen needs some allies in terms of being able to legitimately get the information that they want. But obviously, a citizen can go into court. They shouldn't have to do that.
Well, George, I want to thank you very much for coming on PINAC News with me today. And please tell our audience your website and your Twitter handle.
It's GeorgeSheldon2014.com, and the Twitter handle is Sheldon _FL.
Okay, so Twitter is Sheldon @Sheldon_FL, and the website again one more time?
GeorgeSheldon2014.com.
Well, George, thank you very much for coming on PINAC News, and have a good one.
Hey, thank you very much. It's good to be with you.